Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. Where are we going today?
So the place we'll be in today believed way back when that makeup had healing powers, so both men and women would wear makeup.
California.
No, but yes.
Nevada.
This place created the first 365-day solar calendar. This place is transcontinental, spanning both into Africa with the Sinai Peninsula.
Dick. You were making me think it was the United States.
With the Sinai Peninsula into Asia.
I got nothing.
Where the pyramids are.
Egypt?
Today we'll be in Egypt from 1968 until 1986.
What were your first facts?
They believed makeup had healing powers, so both men and women wore makeup. And then they also created the first 365-day solar calendar.
Well, if you would have told me it was a worldwide option, I may have perhaps not guessed Egypt.
All right.
What year?
From 1968 until 1986.
Well, this is already intriguing. What were the 60s like in Egypt?
So, I know we stopped doing trigger warnings, but I'm letting everyone know now.
You're going to ruin it.
We'll be briefly discussing some genital mutilation and castration.
The last few cases have had a little bit of that.
Yeah.
We already broke in this audience.
So the lady I want to tell you about, her name's Omaima. Omaima Ari was born in 1968 and raised in a large family in Cairo, Egypt. She was one of 16 children.
Yikes.
Yeah, large family it is. She was raised in a strict male-dominated household where she experienced physical and sexual abuse at the hands of the men in her family.
Like her brothers or dad and uncle?
It just says the men in her family. So Omaima and two of her sisters and their mother lived in an impoverished part of the city near the local necropolis, also known as the City of the Dead. I tried to find out if her father had multiple wives because it didn't make sense to me why Omaima, her two sisters, and her mom lived someplace else. But their family structure is not documented in accessible sources. When Omaima was just a mere 6 years old, her father insisted she be circumcised. For those who are unaware of female circumcision here in the U.S., we consider it genital mutilation.
That's because that's what it is.
Yeah. And according to WHO, the World Health Organization, there are 4 types of female genital mutilations.
4?
4 types, yes. Type 1 is the partial or total removal of the clit. Type 2 is removal of the clit and the labia. Types 1 and 2 are the ones that are most common in Egypt.
Still?
So there was like a ban on it around 2008, but it still goes on. The type 3 is known as infibulation, and this is where they seal the vagina. That show that we watched called The Midwives, that one woman went through that, yeah.
I remember it.
And it's where they slice open and reposition the labia, then stitch it shut, and sometimes, depending on who's doing it, they remove the clit while they're at it.
Well, they're already mutilating things. Why not?
Right. And type 4 is more generalized genital mutilation, pricking, piercing, incising, scraping, and cauterizing the genital area.
Ew.
So January 31st, 2025, according to WHO, more than 230 million girls and women alive today have undergone female circumcisions in 30 countries. It's a procedure that girls endure between the ages of birth to 15 years old. Roughly 4 million girls a year are at risk of female genital mutilation. And the procedure is usually carried out by a circumciser, also known as cutters, who are usually the community elders. It could also be the local barber, members of secret societies, herbalists, or even just a female relative. Usually the person doing it has no medical training. And the extra cringe for me...
How is it extra?
The girls are just held down by family members as they're mutilated. There's no numbing, no sedation. According to WHO, there's typically no form of antiseptic or sterilization involved. And since the circumcision usually takes place in the family home, rural huts, or in an open field, it leaves them highly susceptible to infection.
You don't say.
And also, whoever's doing the mutilation, they usually use whatever's handy. Razor blades, knives, or even scissors.
Ugh.
Yeah, Told you, real cringy. But this is where when I was telling my teenage boy, he was like, why are you telling me this? And I promise you it does matter because it's the childhood of the young lady we're going to follow into California. That's right.
Oh.
I lied. We're actually going to be discussing one of the most brutal and gruesome crimes in Los Angeles history.
So I am a good actor.
So that's why I laughed when you said California, because I was like, and that's also why I put the makeup one in there, because I was.
You set me up twice.
But you guessed it. That's why I said kind of. She did grow up in Egypt. When Omaima turns 18, she left Egypt and immigrated to the United States after she met and married an American named Roger Stainbrook.
How old was she when she moved?
She's 18.
Do you know when she was mutilated?
She was 6.
No. I was going to say, if it was like 15, 16, I don't blame her.
Right.
I don't blame her at all, but...
Well, yeah. The marriage with Omaima and Roger didn't last long, and I'm talking they were divorced within a year of marrying. Their divorce was due to allegations of abuse. Omaima continued to reside in the U.S., mainly in Southern California. She struggled to adapt to the cultural changes. There was a huge language barrier. She spoke barely any English. She grew up speaking Egyptian Arabic. Without any friends or family support, Omaima would often isolate herself. She would have to move frequently, and she had no real stability. That is, until she found work as a nanny. Then later, she began working as a model. Omaima has black hair, dark eyes, and with her exotic Egyptian features, people were fascinated by her. She stood at 5'6" and about 120 pounds. Omaima was also living an almost hooker-like lifestyle.
I feel like you are or you aren't.
She didn't stand on the street corner just trying to solicit men. She was in search.
It doesn't matter. If she's using her pussy as currency, she's a prostitute.
She was in search of a sugar daddy. She would frequent local bars and solicit older men for sex. Ishta or Nadia were her go-to fake names she would use. And while she was hooking up with the men at the bars, she was also dating several older men at the same time. In 1989, after learning just enough English, Omaima, who's now 21, obtained her driver's license. In the brief time she has her license, Omaima was noted for 12 traffic violations, including a hit and run, a couple DUIs, and the theft of her boyfriend, 38-year-old Jack Hudson's car in Chino, California.
That's why she had to learn how to drive.
There's no record of Omaima ever serving time in prison for any of those offenses.
Well, it was the 80s.
Well, and it's the beginning of a pattern of escalation for Omaima. Omaima had a thing for just taking things that she wanted. She was caught shoplifting.
Sticky fingers?
She was caught shoplifting by a female security guard. And when the security guard tried to detain her, Omaima assaulted the security guard by biting her breast. Yeah. Omaima got herself a nice little battery charge, but again, there's absolutely no indication she served any jail time. The following year, in November 1990, Omaima was accused of attempted robbery of 61-year-old Robert Hansen. She was a wild woman who is extremely sexually active, if you haven't picked up on that, and has a bit of a violent streak while doing the deed. Apparently, Omaima, who's only 22 at this point, and 61-year-old Robert were having some sexy time. They were having them a bondage session, and Robert was having fun and enjoying himself with this consensual restraining. That is until Omaima pulls a gun out of I don't know where and demanded he give her his money.
How's he supposed to do that if he's strapped down?
I guess she was just like, tell me where your money is. But he didn't have any.
First, tell me where you kept that gun.
Right? He did report Omaima to the authorities after he eventually escaped from being left bound to a bed overnight.
He fell asleep.
Well, she was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, and attempted robbery. Oh, and as if that isn't an embarrassing enough story to tell the police, he was also married and living with his wife when all this occurred. So he had to go home.
She didn't miss him?
He had to go home and tell his wife he didn't come home last night because his 22-year-old girlfriend that he's cheating on her with tied him up during one of their sex games and robbed him at gunpoint.
I feel like she wasn't sympathetic.
I feel like she wasn't either.
You know what? It would have been funny if she's like, really? What happened? Let's reenact it.
Well, and I think that also had a lot to do with why no official charges were filed against Omaima.
Because he had to deal with his wife.
I think it was due to Robert's wife being livid with her cheating husband. So Omaima, out on the loose, was with another boyfriend, Richard Gray. And during their sexual escapades, she pressed a knife to his throat, but Omaima told police it was all consensual and part of their bondage games.
Well, it's after the 60s and 70s, so they're probably like, it's probably legitimate.
Well, I think also because she's thin and pretty, the police were just kind of like,
Well, this is along those beliefs of they can't be evil ladies.
Yeah.
It's just a woman.
Right. But since that was Omaima's version of how things went, and Richard was like, that is not what we agreed to, no charges were filed.
She's like, he didn't use the safe word, it was pineapple.
October 1991, Omaima is now 23, and she meets a new fella while playing pool at a bar. This fella is a flashy kind of fella. 56-year-old William Edwin Nelson, also known as Bill. He was 6'4" and 230 pounds. He liked to sport his red cowboy boots, a large belt buckle, and he drove a bright red sports car. He also served in the Marines. Bill told Omaima he was divorced with 5 children. He worked as a pilot out of Texas and also as a computer programmer in California. But Bill was no angel, and there was something about Omaima that made Bill want to confess his soul to her. He let her know that he was recently released from serving 4 years in prison for attempting to smuggle 100 tons of marijuana from Mexico through his piloting job.
Oh my God.
He'd apparently been a smuggler for years prior to being caught. Omaima didn't care. Bill was head over heels for her. Even though Bill had just met Omaima 2 days prior, he got down on one knee.
He's an idiot.
And proposed.
My God, he's an idiot.
And Omaima, she said yes.
Oh God. Well, we knew she was an idiot.
Bill's friends and family said while yes, the couple were quite affectionate with one another, many believed that Omaima was only marrying Bill for his money. His net worth is unknown. I did try to find that. I think it was one of those he got the money, and because it was illegally obtained, there's no record of how much he actually had. But he also seemed like he liked to spend it. So they met 2 days prior, he proposed, and then a few days after that, on November 1st, the happy couple said their I do's when they eloped to either Arizona or Las Vegas. They mention both cities when they're telling their people that they eloped, but neither city has record of them marrying. Either way, Omaima was now Omaima Nelson, and the couple were off on their honeymoon to Laredo, Texas, to go visit Bill's family.
Laredo?
Well, I looked it up, it said Laredo. But the only catch with this new marriage is Bill's divorce from his first wife, Kathy, was not actually finalized yet.
No.
Less than a month after this lovey-dovey couple were married, or fake married, Bill didn't show up to his part-time computer programming job.
He's dead!
After the Thanksgiving weekend. He was reported missing by his work that Monday, December 2nd. What Bill's coworkers were unaware of was the active investigation into Bill's whereabouts that was initiated 1 day prior to them calling the police. Now for the breakdown, where I might lose you. I tried to make this as clear as I could, but what happened over the Thanksgiving weekend, and where is Bill? Obviously, there's 2 sides to every story. First, I'll tell you one version, then I'll tell you what the evidence shows. Police were questioning Omaima. She claimed Bill had tied her to their bed in their apartment during some bondage play. She decided she didn't like this game, so she told him to stop. She claimed Bill then sexually assaulted her. She also claimed that there was no fight between her and Bill after he assaulted her. They were right as rain, and the police were like, okay, well, where's Bill then? And Omaima was like, yeah, about that. Bill was not killed by me. And they were like, what? 5 other people killed Bill. It was 2 women and 3 guys who came into their apartment that night, drugged her, murdered her husband, and attempted to frame her by dismembering him and planting his dismembered remains when she let a neighbor borrow Bill's car the next day. And police were like, no, try again.
She didn't spend too much time on that story.
Omaima then tried a different version. On November 28th, 1991, Omaima claimed that Bill had tied her to the bed in their apartment during some bondage play. Omaima decided she didn't like this game, so she told him to stop. Omaima was still saying that Bill sexually assaulted her, but this time she said she managed to break free of her restraints and she grabbed the bedside lamp and smashed Bill in the head with the lamp. Then she grabbed a pair of scissors and repeatedly stabbed him.
Oh, not the scissors.
Not finished with her grisly attack, she then grabbed the iron and started wailing on the poor guy with that. Eventually, when Bill was dead at the hands of his new bride, she stopped.
How long had they been married?
3 weeks.
Oh, that soured quickly.
Uh-huh. However, the evidence showed that Bill actually had ligature marks on his ankles and wrists around the time of his death, indicating he was the one that was restrained while she was assaulting him to death.
It makes me curious what all her growing up assaulting was, that she clearly has some trauma.
Uh-huh. Well, after murdering her husband, Omaima didn't call the police like an actual innocent person who was supposedly defending themselves would have done. And just to remind you of their size difference before we get into things further, because I know we like to visualize, Bill's 230 pounds and 6'4", right?
Mm-hmm.
And Omaima is 5'6", 120 pounds. There's a 110-pound difference between them and nearly a foot in height difference.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you're strapped down.
Well, after cracking him in the head with the lamp, then stabbing Bill more than 12 times with the scissors and bludgeoning him to death with an iron, the next morning, this whack job drags Bill's 230-pound lifeless body from their bedroom into the kitchen, where she began dismembering Bill's remains. She dismembered him throughout November 29th and the 30th. She chopped off his head and cooked it in a large stock pot of boiling water.
I don't know what's with people who dismember and then start cooking pieces.
No, and she chopped off his hands and she tossed them into the deep fryer.
Like chicken feet.
She castrated Bill and she claimed she chopped off his penis for revenge for him sexually assaulting her.
Sure.
She filleted the flesh off at the lower half of his body and disemboweled him.
They must have a big kitchen.
The pieces of Bill that she didn't know what to do with, like pieces of his face that she cut off and other pieces of soft tissue.
She was just playing.
She put those into the blender.
Ew, the blender. The fuck is wrong with you?
She put those into the blender.
You realize you're laughing.
At you.
Sure. It's disgusting.
And then she also put them into the garbage disposal.
Well, why stop there? Although I can tell you that's not going to cut it.
The neighbors told police that they heard the garbage disposal running throughout the night.
Oh, what nosy-ass neighbors, though.
I think if it's completely silent and you hear your neighbor's garbage disposal and blender going all throughout the night, that could be annoying.
I feel like I would fall asleep.
Well, they are in an apartment. Omaima apparently realized that through all this work and effort of dismembering her husband, she realized her tummy was a bit rumbly, so she decided to make her a snack. She basted Bill's ribs with barbecue sauce and popped them in the oven. While that cooked, she mixed up some of his other parts with leftover Thanksgiving turkey. She carried on dismembering Bill while his ribs cooked. Omaima sat down at the dinner table and she proceeded to eat his ribs. She even said aloud, "It's so sweet and so delicious. I like mine tender."
Okay, she's a nutcase.
All in all, Omaima dismembered Bill for 12 hours using various kitchen tools, including, but not limited to, a carving knife, a butcher knife, a hammer, a blender, and the garbage disposal.
That's disgusting. And you can't convince me that that garbage disposal wasn't clogged.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure the apartment was a bloody disaster when the police went in there. Omaima cleaned herself up, tossed a bag or two into the trunk of the car, and hopped into Bill's red 1975 Corvette Stingray to go find help with this mess she made. It's now December 1st, and she found herself at her ex-boyfriend, Richard Gray's front door. This was the one feller I mentioned earlier who she tied up and pressed the knife against his throat. Turns out, when you threaten a guy's life with a knife to his throat during sexual escapades, he doesn't want to help your crazy ass. Richard refused to even hear Omaima's version of things and told her to go away. And now there are mixed reports that some say he contacted police and then others say he didn't, because since he refused to listen to her story, he didn't even know the full details. Omaima was still driving around, desperate for help, and it was the wee hours of December 2nd when Omaima went to an acquaintance's house. 27-year-old Jose Esquivel was startled when he heard of the frantic knocking on his front door. He opens his door to see Omaima sobbing, and she sobbed her story to Jose that Bill had assaulted her, so she killed him. She showed Jose cuts on her chest, thighs, and feet, as well as ligature marks on her wrists as proof of her restraints and abuse. She then gestures to a garbage bag she hauled to Jose's doorstep and asked Jose to help her dispose of this here bag. She wanted him to throw it into a bay called Back Bay. Jose was apprehensive, but hadn't shut the door in her face yet, so Omaima was hopeful that she might have actually found somebody to help her. So she tried to sweeten the deal with a promise of $75,000 cash from Bill's safe. Reluctantly, Jose said he would help Omaima.
He should have said, "Show me the money."
Well, he told her to hold on while he grabbed his truck keys. But instead, Jose called the police. Omaima was arrested at Jose's house for suspicion of murder. And inside that garbage bag that Omaima had lugged up to Jose's doorstep, it was full of Bill's entrails and his dentures.
Oh. How old was he?
56.
Seems early for dentures.
Don't know. Officers discovered more of Bill in a garbage bag in the trunk of the car. Police at this point go out to Bill and Omaima's apartment. A mini side note before I get into the condition of the apartment. That safe Omaima claimed had Bill's secret stash of cash. Yeah, when police popped that bad boy open, it only had $100 in there.
What's the point of the safe?
He was planning ahead. He was trying to be prepared.
He spent all his money on the safe. Now it is safe. You get it?
I get it.
His money is safe. Because he bought the safe.
The safe. I got it. Nearly everything in the apartment was painted with blood. There was blood on nearly every piece of furniture. Bill's flesh was haphazardly strewn about in various rooms. Pieces of poor Bill were either wrapped in aluminum foil, stuffed into plastic bags, or slopped into cardboard boxes. In total, police found 11 containers filled with bits and pieces of Bill's remains, some of which were cooked. The officers found Bill's severed cooked head wrapped in foil and stored in the refrigerator. His deep-fried hands were still in the fryer. They found a glass jar containing unknown bits of Bill. And I know I've mentioned it a few times now, but Bill was a large feller, 6'4", and weighing 230 pounds. The police estimated only 100 pounds of Bill were recovered.
Oh, where's the rest?
The coroner said it was actually 150 pounds of Bill that were recovered, so there's 80 pounds of mass that are unaccounted for, including his penis.
She ate it.
Needless to say, Omaima was arrested for murder. A year later, Omaima's trial began. Her defense was claiming Omaima acted in self-defense.
What?
Battered woman syndrome and temporary insanity due to abuse.
I think it's permanent insanity.
They said that she had temporary insanity due to abuse and due to her genital mutilation as a child, and she was also abused as a child while living in Egypt. I feel like they came up with every excuse possible, and they were like, she's suffering from all these things. Pick one.
She's not suffering from, she's enjoying every minute.
They also claimed sex was traumatic and painful for her.
I kind of feel like I could buy into that.
But since she was throwing her vagina, mutilated or not, at every penis that strolled by, I'm going to say no. I don't think it was traumatic.
No. You ever seen the movie Monster? That's what I figure this is, of like very much traumatic and hostile. And she used it to get what she wanted because she knew that was a currency fellers were more than willing to utilize.
Yeah, that's true. Well, her defense also claimed Bill regularly sexually assaulted Omaima during their less than a month-long relationship and that she was suffering from that battered woman syndrome. She also claimed that during their 3 weeks of marriage, she lived in constant fear because Bill would threaten her with death or that he would falsely report her to immigration as an illegal alien. Her own psychiatrist described Omaima as psychotic, and he testified that from consuming pieces of her husband, she admitted to him that she also got dressed up for his dismemberment.
I don't know what that means.
She put on red lipstick, red high heels, and a red hat to prepare for the night-long dismemberment.
No, that was so that she didn't stain anything.
Well, I figured it was like a tribute to him since he seemed to like red because he had the red sports car and wore red cowboy boots.
That's a weird.
Yeah. He also found her disturbing as she described eating his ribs after she prepared them like they do in restaurants. He said he'd never seen anything, quote, so bizarre or psychotic in his 20 years of practice. The state had Omaima's ex, the first husband, testify that during their brief marriage, Omaima never complained about discomfort or pain during sex.
Or he wasn't listening.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and it might not be the actual physical side of things that caused pain as much as it was the emotional side of things.
Well, even if it caused her any sort of physical discomfort, which I feel like probably happened, I still feel like if she was using that as a source of manipulation to get something else at the end of that it was worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not going to convince me that her trauma didn't start from childhood and that's what led to the weird stabby games. And I think the reason she escalated is the more that she used herself physically, the more sucked into her own black hole of Looney Tune-ness she got.
Oh, for sure.
It's a little weird to eat dick after.
Well, Bill's almost ex-wife, Kathy, also testified that while no angel, Bill was never violent during their marriage. So this whole he was
battered woman
raping her and beating her didn't make sense. All of these accusations about sexual violence Omaima experienced at the hands of Bill, a medical examiner looked over Omaima back when she was arrested on December 2nd, 1991, and stated she showed no signs of physical or sexual trauma. The pathology report of Bill is the one that revealed the ligature marks.
How the hell did they do one?
Well,
he's baked.
They still showed that he had the ligature marks on his wrists and his ankles that indicated he was the one tied up shortly before his death. During her trial, they roped everything together because it showed Omaima was violent and escalating, so she faced the consequences for her assault with a deadly weapon charge with the other feller, and the false imprisonment and attempted robbery. Her trial took 5 weeks. Omaima's fate was left in the hands of the jury. Despite feeling some pity for Omaima, the 8 women and 4-man jury did not entirely believe her claims of abuse. It took the jurors 6 days of deliberation before finally reaching a verdict on January 12th, 1993.
What took him so long?
The jurors acquitted her of the robbery and false imprisonment charge, but found her guilty of assault with a deadly weapon on that 61-year-old married feller, Robert Hansen. She was also acquitted of the first-degree murder charges, stating there was insufficient evidence to prove the murder was premeditated. However, she was found guilty of second-degree murder. The now 24-year-old Egyptian, Omaima, received 18 years to life for the second-degree murder of William Nelson, and an additional 9 years for the assault with a deadly weapon on her married 61-year-old boyfriend. If you do the math, and she got 27 years to life. She tried to appeal her sentence in 1995 and was unsuccessful. And since being tossed in prison, she's been maintaining several long-distance relationships. In 2006, Omaima was around 38 when she gained the right to a conjugal visit with one of her many suitors.
Oh, no.
This feller was in his 70s.
What?
Yeah.
He's real hard up that he's
he was
using prison as Tinder date.
Dude, when I was telling my boy about this case, he was like, that's somebody's grandpa. And I was like,
probably great grandpa.
I was like, oh.
Somebody probably drove him there. He's legally blind.
Well, that feller, he died in 2011.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in jail.
No, he died in 2011. And Omaima was like, him and I were married. I'm a widow.
Oh, God.
And the prison was like, no, ma'am, you were not married. This crazy lady also filed twice for habeas corpus, which is a legal procedure made to a court alleging the unlawful detention or imprisonment of an individual and requests that the court order the individual's custodian to bring the prisoner to court to determine whether or not their detention is lawful. And both times she filed, once in 2002 and once in 2019, the circuit court said, no, you, crazy lady, belong in prison. Omaima has also had several disciplinary infractions, including fighting, battering a staff member, possession of contraband, theft, arguing, failing to comply with instructions, and, quote, not being in compliance with grooming standards.
Ew.
Yeah, ew. Omaima first became eligible for parole in 2006, but was denied because she was found to be unpredictable and a serious threat to public safety.
I feel like they could have predicted that she was unpredictable.
Right? She became eligible for parole again in 2011, but was denied again since she had not taken responsibility for the murder of Bill, and they felt that she would not be a productive citizen if she were freed.
She wasn't productive to begin with.
Well, she kept the older men sexually satisfied till she held weapons to their throats.
Turns out that's not legal.
Omaima will not be eligible for parole again until 2026.
Ew.
And just to throw this one out there, she did do a take-backsies on the whole. I ate pieces of him when she realized how disturbing people found it. And she was like, fine. I only cooked him and seasoned him and pieces are missing, but I didn't eat him.
And where did he go?
Exactly. And just like you and your pervy brain,
What?
my boy, when I discussed this case with him, he did the same thing you did and said he thinks Omaima totally ate Bill's penis.
She fried up some sausage.
I personally think if she really was angry with him over the whole sex thing, I think she put his penis in the blender and put it down the garbage disposal.
No.
But this case was recommended to me by my 13-year-old daughter because she heard a general gist of the case of some crazy lady deep fried her husband's head and hands, and then she ate his ribs with barbecue sauce. And she's like, you gotta do this case, Ma. But she was unaware of all the other stuff.
Yeah, but where did she hear about it at all?
I don't know. I think it was like a YouTube reel or a TikTok or something.
Yeah.
But I was just like, that was disturbing for my daughter to give me that case.
Yeah. Also disturbing she's up for parole in 2026.
Yeah, but she's still not taking accountability for her actions. So I feel like she'll be denied. But I think she needs some serious therapy.
You think? Everybody involved needed some therapy afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, wait. You know what?
No.
I sent you a picture of her and a picture of him.
What about her third husband? No. I like that they took a picture of a ball of tinfoil.
Well, that's a picture of what's supposed to be Bill's cooked head.
No, but it's just like alright. I don't know why people want to dismember a body.
To dispose of it.
But like the amount of time and effort and cleanup of dismembering somebody, and not to mention like all the things you're dirtying and making a bigger mess trying to clean up your mess, it doesn't work.
I don't think people realize how much blood and guts are in the human body.
She probably did think she could eat all of him.
And what she couldn't eat, I think she planned to put down the garbage disposal and then realized it didn't go down like that. So she needed to blend him to a smoother consistency. I think she was blending him and pouring it into the garbage disposal. Super gross.
I would say definitely seems like it wasn't planned.
Yeah,
But she's definitely a pretty sick ticket. How old is she now?
She was born in 1968.
If I didn't want to do the math, she's how old now?
57.
Ooh, you pick some weird cases.
I didn't pick it. Your niece did.
Which is you, secondhand.
But that's all I got on Omaima Nelson.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.